Twitter files now putting congressional testimony from former CEO Jack Dorsey from back in 2018 into question. This as GOP lawmakers react to evidence of censorship of conservative voices by the tech giant. Welcome to Fox News Live. I'm Griff Jenkins. Hey, Anita.
Hey, Griff, great to see you. I'm Anita Vogel. The White House also denying any involvement in the alleged suppression, and 2 more sets of documents are expected to be released this weekend. Alexandria Hoff is live with the latest developments. And Alex, I know you've been digging into this. What are you finding out?
Well, yeah, and we're bracing for more. So the thread released yesterday by Matt Taibbi focuses on the period of time between October of 2020 and January 6th. And according to Taibbi, it shows how a small team of high-ranking executives assumed more and more power over content, quote, coming to believe sincerely that it was Twitter's responsibility to control as much as possible what people could talk about, how often, and with whom. Taibbi also zeroed in on Twitter's decision to remove then-President Trump from the platform. According to internal communications he shared, it doesn't come down to a singular day or tweet. This actually happened after the election. He wrote, the bulk of the internal debate leading to Trump's ban took place in those 3 January days. However, the intellectual framework was laid in the months preceding the Capitol riots. Another big takeaway from this latest drop is how regularly executives met with federal agencies. That includes Yoel Roths, who you're seeing there, the company's former safety chief. He played a critical role in suppressing the New York Post reporting. Taibbi shared a screenshot of this, quote, this post about the Hunter Biden laptop situation shows that Roth not only met weekly with the FBI and DHS, but with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. On Thursday, writer Barry Weiss revealed Twitter's efforts to suppress prominent conservatives, which has led many to recall this moment from 2018 when former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey testified before Congress.
I don't know what Twitter is up to. It sure looks like to me that they're censoring people, and they ought to stop it. Are you censoring people?
No.
Twitter shadow banning prominent Republicans. It's bad. Is that true?
No.
Well, a trove of additional documents is expected sometime today and tomorrow as well. So we have a lot of work to do in looking through those as they come out, and we will keep you updated. Griff, Anita.
Yeah, Alex, you know, it is so interesting to get a peek behind the curtain, if you will, at how things were being done at Twitter. You mentioned there are more documents coming today, maybe tomorrow. Do you have any idea how many more documents are coming and what the topics might be? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just thought I'd ask you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And it looks like we're going to zero in on certain days. We have these days surrounding January 6th. This time period was October of 2020 to January 6th. So it looks like we're going to get into the 7th and 8th as well. But in terms of how many of these documents we expect to come out, it was kind of teased that these were important days in terms of the internal workings and dialogue at Twitter. So we're not sure how many we're going to see, but they keep getting more intricate as they are revealed. In this last drove, I mean, I think it was into the 50s, this thread. So yeah, they're getting longer.
Yeah, very interesting reading there. Alex Hoff, live in Washington. Thank you so much,
Sure.
Alex. Griff.
Great stuff, Anita and Alex. Meanwhile, President Biden is spending a rare weekend in Washington as criticism grows over Biden's trade of Russian arms dealer Victor Bout for the wrongfully imprisoned American athlete Brittany Griner. Aisha Hasni is live on the North Lawn outside the White House with the latest. Hi, Aisha.
Hey, Griff, good afternoon to you. So the White House continues to defend its decision for this trade. They say they really never had an avenue to bring Paul home, saying that he, in fact, was never part of Russia's calculus in this trade because of the espionage charges that were filed against him. They have been treating him very differently in Russia. The 52-year-old veteran is not set to be released until 2036. Paul's brother, David, who supports Griner's release, by the way, is pushing for more attempts to get Paul out.
You know, he's, I think, pretty shattered. He was getting his hopes up. I think we all had our hopes up that he would be going home. He'd been planning, you know, where he would live. He's lost his apartment in the States in the last 4 years. And he was thinking about that future. And I think not being able to think about that future as concretely is going to be hard.
So, Griff, Democrats are saying that presidents from both parties have had to authorize really tough trades over the years. But Republicans say handing over the man once called the merchant of death and leaving Paul behind was a terrible deal.
He is in a different position, Ainsley, because he's not been accused of a crime that he committed. We should have never traded Victor Bout. I just want to stress how dangerous he is. This is not someone who is selling firearms for street gangs in Moscow. We're talking about anti-aircraft systems, tanks and artillery, missiles and rockets.
And Griff, shortly after that trade, Putin actually came out and said that more exchanges with the U.S., more prisoner swaps are an option, and the administration also following up and saying that the channels are still open to bring Paul home. Griff?
These are such tough and difficult situations. It's good an American is home. Aisha Hasni live outside the White House. Aisha, thanks. Anita?
Well, Griff, now back to our top story. Newly released Twitter files are calling former CEO Jack Dorsey's congressional testimony into question. Joining us now is Republican Congressman from Tennessee and member of the House Ways and Means Committee, David Kustoff. Congressman, good of you to come today. We really appreciate it. It sure does seem like every day there's a new dump of this information from Twitter. We're getting new information about what was going on behind the scenes there. You know, it does seem pretty clear conservatives were in fact censored, shadow banned, or something called being the recipient of visibility filtering. Yesterday, we learned some of the insight into the time leading up to when President Trump was banned. And again, we're hearing more to come today. We heard that from our reporter. You know, the former CEO, Jack Dorsey, he testified under oath in Congress. None of this was happening. So he's going to get called back to Capitol Hill for more questioning in the new year. Did he commit perjury, or can he just say, I didn't know this was going on?
Well, so those are all good questions. Thank you for having me on this morning. You know, whether you are Republican, Democrat, Independent, red, blue, whatever, everybody should be concerned about the suppression of free speech. And that's certainly what's happened with the release of the information that Matt Taibbi released last night. Whether conservatives are suppressed, whether there's visibility, manipulation, we should all be concerned. And you played that clip of Jack Dorsey testifying 4 years ago that none of that was happening. So in the next few weeks, the next few months, we're going to see a number of executives, current and former Twitter executives, and those of other social media outlets, come before Congress where we can ask specific, deliberate questions, and we need to put them on the record. Obviously, what was told and testified to 4 years ago was not true, and that should concern every American.
Yeah, you know, it really should. It is hard to believe that testimony was 4 years ago. It seems like just yesterday. Twitter, of course, is a private company, but it is supposed to be like a town square. We know now that their executives were meeting with the FBI and the DNI. So this censorship really flies in the face of free speech. Your reaction to that, have we ever seen anything like this before in the United States?
No, nothing that is as deliberate or as concentrated as what we saw in the months leading up to the 2020 election. And let's face it, there are so many Americans and people around the world that get their information from all of these social media outlets like Twitter. So it should be a concern to every American. You know what? I believe, I think most of us do, that people are smart enough to be able to receive the information and process it and make their own decisions. But they've got to be able to have that information. And when Twitter, and right before the 2020 election, decided what information was released to people, what got filtered, what didn't get filtered, that obviously affected the way people voted in November of 2020. And we cannot have a repeat of that in any future election.
Yeah, it certainly affected what they were able to read and not read. Very quickly on this, and then I want to turn the topic. What do you think can be done about this? Do you think some of these executives are going to be punished? And under new leadership, do you see Twitter as new and improved and maybe a better town square? Just quickly.
Yeah, well, real quick, I think Elon Musk, in the short time that he's owned Twitter, has done a great service because he has shined a light on how Twitter operated in the past. We don't need Twitter or any other social media outlet to operate like that. So you're going to see a number of these executives from the social media platforms testify before the House Judiciary Committee, the House Oversight Committee. They're going to have to answer some very direct, specific questions. And if they don't come up with the solutions that America wants, then Congress is going to be put in a position where we have to come up with the solutions.
Okay, going to be interesting. Want to turn the topic now to the lame duck session of Congress, as they call it, the time between the election and when the new Congress is sworn in. There is some big business to take care of. The deadline for a 2023 spending deal to avoid a government shutdown is December 16th. That's looming. The clock is ticking. Some Dems say they're not going to go for a stopgap measure. They want the full funding bill that goes into next year. But listen to Nancy Pelosi on this from just the other day.
We may just have to go to a CR, which would be most unfortunate. But we have to weigh it against how unfortunate it would be if they cannibalized the domestic budget at the expense of the defense budget. We need them both.
Okay, so CR, congressional resolution, a stopgap measure. But, you know, Leader McCarthy, Minority Leader McCarthy, says Republicans should wait until they have the gavel to craft a big spending bill. What do you think happens here, a short-term bill or the bigger bill that Leader McCarthy is talking about?
Well, part of it is dependent on Democrats. And two things to realize. One is the Democrats have not engaged the Republicans on these spending bills. So our input, our voice, the voice of now the majority of the people in the country after January 3rd has not been recognized. Two, the money that they want to spend in this new fiscal year is tremendous, especially when you consider all the brand new money that was spent in the American Rescue Plan and in what they call the Inflation Reduction Act, the Green New Deal provision that was passed in August. So the continuing resolution, as you mentioned, expires on Friday. You know, one of two things can happen. Number one, Democrats can engage with Republicans. We can come up with some common sense ideas as it relates to spending. Or two, they can decide that they don't want to engage Republicans. We kick the can down the road, if you will, till after January 3rd, when Republicans control the House of Representatives, and we can talk about the ways that we put spending under control and dial things back.
Yeah, a lot of big things at stake there in that bill. I said congressional resolution. I meant continuing resolution. Thank you so much. Congressman David Kustoff, thanks for coming in today. Always great to chat with you.
Good. Thank you for having me today.
Griff.
Anita, now from the other side of the aisle, we are joined by Democratic Congressman from California and member of the Armed Services and Transportation and Infrastructure Committees, John Garamendi. Congressman, great to have you here as always. Let's jump to our top story. You've seen over the course of several days this week the release of these Twitter files last night, the last one. Your reaction, sir?
Well, we shouldn't be surprised. This has been in the news for several years, certainly 4 years ago before that hearing. All of this was very, very well known that Twitter was, in fact, trying to tone down and eliminate certain types of speech, certain types of inflammatory tweets. So that's not news. The files are interesting, but they basically show what we've already known. There's another issue here that we really need to pay attention to, and that is social media is used and has been used to create very serious problems within our society. Everything from racism to violence, all of that has been part of the social media platforms, not only Twitter, but all of them. The result of that is that we are fed through the algorithms that these social media platforms use, a continued flow of what we were once thought to be interested in. That tends to augment the anger and does not provide a balance on any issue. A solution is to allow the public who has been offended to sue the media platform. That way the government doesn't have to involve itself in censorship, but the algorithms that are used by the platforms will be adjusted by the owner of the platform. Otherwise, they're sued for some outrageous conduct that they've allowed on their platform.
You know, that's fascinating, Congressman, that you raised that. I interviewed the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, yesterday. He talked about really we need to have hearings and address all of this, the Twitter files, and also Section 230 and protections for these companies. Paint for me, if you will, sort of the hearings you think we need under Republican leadership, but obviously you would be a part of it.
Well, you showed a quick snapshot of a previous hearing. Those hearings get into the bottom of this. Is there censorship out there? Certainly there is an effort to keep certain types of speech, pornography, other kinds of things off of the platforms, and I think that's perfectly appropriate. However, the hand of government here has not been involved in these situations. It is, in fact, the company, in the case of Twitter, that is trying to moderate the content that is on their platform. And my view is, good, let them do that. Is that a good thing? Well, it may be a necessary thing from the point of view of the platform. And that Section 230 you talked about was written more than 25 years ago, that basically was designed to give these companies an open road ahead with no responsibility on their part for what they were putting onto the platform. I think that's dead wrong. I think they ought to be held accountable for what they allow on their platform. That way, if there's censorship, it's coming from the private sector, not from the government.
Congressman, we were just showing Jack Dorsey, the former Twitter CEO, testifying. You may have heard our reporter Alex Hoff earlier playing that soundbite where he was asked specifically about the censorship and the shadow banning, and he said no. Do you believe Dorsey lied under oath?
I have no idea. You played a 10-second clip. There's a whole lot more testimony, a whole lot more that was said. You've got to take all these things in context. And judging from my colleague who preceded me, Dorsey's going to be held to account. Either he did or he didn't. We'll find out.
All right, Congressman, I do have to ask you about another topic, and that is the fiscal deadline. Government's running out of money on this coming Friday. What are we headed for? Will the government run out? Will there be a CR, or will there be a larger spending bill?
Well, we absolutely have to get the spending bill done for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's our responsibility to do that. Can we do it in the next few days before the 16th? We can. Deadlines are absolutely appropriate. You and I always waited to the day before the final exam to study. Well, the final exam date is up for us in Congress. And so we need to get it done. We can get it done. Everybody's looking for one additional thing that they want in the appropriations. Do keep in mind that 2 days ago, we did pass the National Defense Authorization Act and a couple of other bills that set the authority for the spending. Now, the appropriation is the actual spending bill, and that'll be done hopefully this week. Everybody is pushing and shoving for their final little piece that they want in it. At some point, we're out of time. I do not think we should never allow this to go into the next Congress. We need to get this done now. Let the next Congress deal with the issues that are forthcoming. One other issue is my colleague that preceded me said that the Republicans were not involved. That's simply not the case. Republicans have been involved. The leadership of the Republican Party in the House, the committee leadership of the Republicans on the Appropriation Committee and all of the subcommittees, they have been involved. And certainly what we call the Big Four, that is Pelosi, McCarthy, Schumer, and McConnell, are involved in the final negotiations. So it is like the Defense Authorization Act, which had 350 votes. Bipartisan. We may get there. We should get there.
Bottom line, you say that Democrats are actively and willingly wanting to work with Republicans to get an actual bill that you can both agree upon and not have a continuing resolution.
Well, that would be the best. We can have a continuing resolution until January 3rd, 11:59 seconds on the morning of January 3rd. After that, it is sine die. The Congress, 117th Congress, is finished by Constitution, and that's our last moment. We've been there before. I've been on January 3rd in the morning passing a piece of legislation.
Brutally attacking a homeless man in broad daylight with a baseball bat in New York City is back on the streets less than a day after his arrest. Molly Line has been covering this story and has more on this. Molly, disturbing pictures, such a disturbing story. What more can you tell us?
Absolutely. You really kind of summed up the crux of this, is that this man, it was a vicious attack. This happened in the morning, right there on the street, broad daylight in New York City. He's already out on bail less than a day after that arrest happened. The brutal assault caught right on surveillance video. It shows the suspect, identified as 36-year-old Karen Azizi by NYPD, wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, a mask, swiftly pulling out an orange baseball bat that he had hidden in his pants, striking a man walking down the street right in the back of the head. The victim, identified as 47 years old, falls to the ground as the assailant looms overhead, screaming at him. The victims rushed to the hospital in Harlem, suffering swelling about the back of his head and a laceration to the front. This happened about a week and a half ago in broad daylight, just before 9 a.m. But Azizi was arrested on Wednesday, facing weapon possession and assault charges. He remained locked up for less than a day, posting $7,500 cash bail, although the Manhattan DA's office had requested $40,000 cash bail. Meanwhile, New York City Mayor Eric Adams and police leadership continue to plead for a rollback of state bail reform laws, changes that would help to keep repeat offenders off the streets, and specifically asking that judges be allowed to take into consideration the dangerousness of a defendant. Whether or not a defendant is an actual danger to the public should be taken into consideration, is their argument. Anita?
Oh, unbelievable. Less than a day. Back out on the street. The victim is lucky he survived, I guess. At least that's the good news there. Molly Line, thank you so much for that live report. Great.
Well, the University of Idaho has planned a moment of silence during their winter graduation today to honor those who were killed in last month's brutal stabbing of 4 students. Police are continuing to search for a suspect and have asked the public for help in identifying the driver of a car spotted near the scene. Alexis McAdams is live in Moscow, Idaho with the latest. Hey, Alexis.
Hey, Griff. Yeah, this piece of new information about the car is really the biggest thing we've been able to get out here on the ground in Moscow, Idaho, in quite the past few days. There has been a big spike in tips rolling in to both the FBI, state police, and Moscow PD after they asked for information about this car. Take a look here at that vehicle. These are stock images, so just an example of the car police are looking for. It's either a 2011 or a 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. They believe it was spotted right near the crime scene. And where this crime scene is, Griff, you really have to pull off and get onto that side road. So if the car was near the home, they believe those people or person inside would have vital information in the case. Listen.
We've had an amazing amount of tips come in on the white car. We appreciate everybody's help that has been sending in those tips, and investigators are vetting those and they're following up on those, and the response has been very great. We appreciate all the help from across the nation and our community.
We also know that investigators now have the results for some of the key evidence that was processed today at the Idaho State Police Crime Lab. They're getting it back in these past few days, rather. We've had a chance to tour that lab, Griff, which is near Boise. We had a team of highly skilled scientists in there showing how they process lots of evidence. In this case, they've had more than 100 pieces of physical evidence and 4,000 crime scene photos, so a lot to work with there. The team is looking to lift fingerprints, test blood spatter, or even analyze a single hair. It could be the smallest detail that can crack this case. Though the case is the top priority, the lab still has a lot of other work to do.
This is a really important case for us. It's a high-profile case, obviously. And we want to be able to bring justice to these families. We want to bring safety to communities. Those are all really important things to us here at the laboratory.
And it's been nearly 1 month to the day, which will be tomorrow, that these 4 students were killed in that off-campus house. This weekend is winter graduation, as you mentioned, and Kaylee Gonsalves, one of the victims, was actually set to graduate today. So her family, Griff, would have been here in town celebrating, and now there's just a completely different mood here as so many families are back in town. But we're expecting a lot of those kids and those parents, once they leave here after graduation, the kids who graduated won't come back, but a lot of the other people aren't going to come back either after winter break. They say they're going to start doing remote learning, Griff.
Heartbreaking. Nearly a month, no suspect, no motive. Unbelievable. Alexis McAdams, live for us in Moscow. Alexis, thank you. Anita?
Well, Griff, former Minneapolis police officer J. Alexander Kung is now sentenced to an additional 3.5 years behind bars for his involvement in the killing of George Floyd. The former officer pleaded guilty in October to a single count of aiding and abetting manslaughter. He kneeled on Floyd's back while another cop pressed on his neck back in May of 2020, resulting in Floyd's death. Kung appeared virtually for his sentencing hearing from a federal prison in Ohio, where he is already serving time for federal charges tied to the incident. Floyd's death sparked months of nationwide protests against police brutality and racism. Task force to stop illegal immigrants who are slipping past Border Patrol agents. This as the Biden administration asks for $3 billion to fight the surge as the Title 42 deadline nears. Our Bill Malugin is on the ground today in La Jolla, Texas, where he's been quite often. Bill, what's happening there today?
Anita, good afternoon to you. Look, even with Title 42 still in place right now, Border Patrol in multiple sectors in Texas are already essentially overwhelmed. Starting in Eagle Pass, we'll take you there right now. Take a look at this video our drone team shot early this morning in Eagle Pass as yet another single massive group of several hundred migrants crossed illegally, all at the same time. As usual, as you can see from the video, almost all of them are single adults, and they're coming in from countries that for the most part are not subject to Title 42, which is why they're willing to turn themselves in like this. They're willing to self-surrender because they feel they will be released into the United States. And CBP sources telling Fox News in the last 24 hours alone in that Del Rio sector, more than 2,100 illegal crossings there. An even bigger group yesterday, though. Take a look at the second piece of video. Late yesterday afternoon, north side of Eagle Pass, a single massive group of 650 migrants crossed illegally, all at the same time. At the exact same time that was happening, 350 crossed on the other side of town. So in a 1 hour span yesterday, our team saw in Eagle Pass more than 1,000 people cross illegally. Huge drain on Border Patrol resources. And here's what's happening as a result of that. Take a look at this third piece of video. We put our drone over the soft side tent facility on the north side of Eagle Pass. This is a Border Patrol processing facility. It's got capacity for 1,000 people, and it is already starting to overflow. We saw lines of migrants going out the door yesterday. There were Border Patrol vans loaded with migrants that couldn't unload yet because they're already getting so over capacity. And keep in mind, that is with Title 42 still in place. Happening in El Paso as well. Take a look at this last piece of video. This is sent to us by a contact in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico last night, showing hundreds of migrants crossing illegally into El Paso last night, walking through the river and then forming a single file line very nonchalantly going into the nighttime hours, just filing into the United States. Again, self-surrendering, expecting that they are going to be released. CBP sources telling Fox News in the last 24 hours alone in the El Paso sector, more than 2,600 illegal crossings. Those numbers are unheard of, unprecedented, especially for the month of December. And back out here live, keep in mind, we're in December right now, typically considered a quote-unquote colder month at the border. Remember, President Biden said this border crisis was seasonal. It only happens in the springtime. That is obviously not true. We're pushing into these colder months, and we're seeing record numbers on top of record numbers every day, and that is with Title 42 still in place. Border Patrol sources tell us, wait till it drops in a couple weeks, then you're going to see a surge on top of a surge. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, Bill, did you say 2,600 illegal crossings in one day in the El Paso sector? Or is that what you said?
That's correct. 2,600, one day, one sector. And remember, Obama's former DHS Secretary Jay Johnson said 1,000 illegal crossings in a day nationwide would be a crisis. We got more than double that in one sector, and there's 9 sectors on the border.
And Title 42 is ending soon. All right, Bill Malugin, always covering this story for us. Thank you so much, Bill. Griff.
Thanks.
All right, Anita, let's go a little deeper. The Heritage Foundation releasing brand new research this week into where migrants end up after they pass through various nonprofit organizations. On set with us today, former DHS Oversight Counsel and the director of Heritage Foundation's Oversight 2,600 in El Paso, more than 2,000 in Del Rio. But very rarely do we get any insight into what happens once the migrants are released into the interior. What did you find?
Right, so that's the question our report answers, and answers it concretely. What we did is we bought bulk cell phone data and tracked the location movement of those cell phones. We focused it in for a 1-month period at 30 NGO facilities at the border, and we were shocked to find that of those 30 NGO facilities, in only a 1-month period, illegal aliens went to every single congressional district in the United States but for one. The resettlement pipeline is national. It goes to every state, every district, and it was shocking, honestly, what we found.
And speak to this project you did, because in the years I've been covering the border, and I've been covering it a lot, it's always struck me that the federal government doesn't track what happens to them once they are released to an NGO, and NGOs, by and large, just facilitate them to wherever they want to go.
Exactly. The Biden border crisis couldn't be put on without the help of the NGOs. That's why the Biden administration works so closely with them to transfer overflow capacity to the NGOs to distribute the illegal aliens to their final destination. Many will say this is the final link in the human smuggling chain. When the cartels turn them over to Border Patrol turns them over to the NGOs, and the NGOs take them throughout the country. This is what makes it so easy for illegal aliens to get to the border and where they want to go. And so that's what we uncovered in this. This is something you correctly note. The government doesn't track this. They very easily could. And it's a shame that the Heritage Foundation has to step into that void to prove this simple thing, that illegal aliens are going everywhere. This is a national project.
How would the federal government do it?
Well, they're giving them all cell phones as an alternative to detention right now, instead of keeping illegal aliens in custody through the duration of their hearing so they can be removed. The federal government is giving them cell phones. You could track those cell phones. One thing you could also do is make it a condition of release that you actually have to show up to your hearing, and they're checking in at certain places. Another thing is, do not rely on the nonprofit community, which isn't subject to the same sort of standards that federal government detention are. A lot of these are pop-up shops where illegal aliens are just going in, they're handed a plane ticket that is paid for, oftentimes and reimbursed by the taxpayers, and they're sent on their merry way. That's not the way a serious immigration and border security system should work at all.
Mike, earlier this morning, I learned from my CBP sources that since October 1st, let me show you the total migrant encounters this fiscal year, which began on October 1st. You can see there's more than 485,000, almost 159,000 of which were Title 42'd. So that leaves roughly 326,000 that were turned loose. Now, they are untracked in the U.S. How significant of a problem is that? Because I just want to play one soundbite. Earlier this week, President Biden, who went to Arizona, chose not to go to the border. Here is what he said about
thing that we do in this country on every single policy level, from the federal to the state to the local. It impacts us in our school systems, our healthcare systems, our national security is directly impacted. There are dozens and dozens of known and suspected terrorists that are crossing that border. We have over 1 million gotaways, people who we don't even know who they are. All we know is that we didn't catch them when they crossed. It is a huge problem. And the fact that the Biden administration, Biden himself, won't go to the border to see the disaster of their own purposeful making is frankly inexcusable. This crisis was purposely caused. It was premeditated and planned. And the numbers you just show, they're skyrocketing. We're breaking record after record. And when Title 42 goes away, we're going to break even more records. It is a disgrace. It's a national embarrassment. And frankly, Congress really needs to step into the void and do something about it. That's why we, the Heritage Foundation, are calling for the immediate impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. That is a non-negotiable first thing they should do.
That may be coming in the new year when Republicans take over. Mike Howell, thank you for taking time today. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Griff.
Anita?